Ever feel like your smartphone is like another part of you?
Haha, yeah.
Well, there's this theory, the extended mind, saying our tools and tech aren't just helping us think, they're part of the thinking process.
Mm.
And today, we're going deep on Andy Clark, the guy who really brought this idea forward.
Really makes you rethink that old idea of the mind just being stuck in our brains, doesn't it?
Yeah, for sure.
Clark argues that our thinking processes, they actually go beyond our skull. They bring in things from the outside into how we think, remember things, and solve problems.
Okay, so maybe not as crazy as it sounded at first. I mean, imagine trying to get anywhere without your phone's GPS.
Right.
You're basically outsourcing your sense of direction to your phone. But Clark's ideas, they go way beyond just, you know, relying on gadgets,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely. Like, think about something as basic as a notepad and pen.
Yeah, okay.
We use it to jot down our shopping lists, our to-do lists, and that frees up space in our minds, right? We're relying on that external tool to help us remember.
Yeah, it's like our minds are outsourcing tasks to the physical world.
Exact.
And this isn't new, is it? Like, didn't scientists and explorers always use notebooks?
Exactly. Think about Darwin, all of those detailed notes he took while on the Beagle.
Right.
Those notebooks were super important for his theory of evolution. They weren't just places to store information, they were tools he used to think.
So it's not just about remembering, it's about how these tools outside of us help us process things, find patterns, even come up with new ideas.
You got it. And that's where tech really comes in. Our phones, computers, the internet, they've become such powerful extensions of our minds, probably more than any tool ever.
I think we can all relate to that feeling of having the whole world's information right there on our phones.
Right.
But does Clark's theory mean my smartphone is like literally part of my mind?
That's a good question. It's a question that Clark himself wrestles with.
Yeah.
He says that the connection between our minds and these tools is so tight that the line gets blurry. We're not just using technology, it's becoming part of how we think.
That makes sense. But it's not all about digital stuff, is it? I mean, Clark talks about the body itself as an extension of the mind, too.
Oh, absolutely. We often forget how important our bodies are in shaping how we think and see the world.
Yeah, for sure.
There's this idea called interoceptive learning. It's about how being in tune with what's happening inside our bodies can actually make us better at making decisions, understanding our emotions, and even handling stress.
Okay, I'm really interested to hear more about that. Are there any, like, real-world examples of how this interoceptive learning works?
Well, one that comes to mind is Diana Nyad, the long-distance swimmer.
Oh, well.
She's famous for her incredible mental toughness, especially her ability to stay calm and focused during those super long, difficult swims. Researchers have studied her brain activity, and she's consistently able to stay calm and focused, even when things are really rough.
So she's basically a master of that mind-body connection.
You could say that. Her ability to tap into her body's signals and use them to her advantage, it really shows how powerful interoceptive awareness can be.
Yeah. And this brings us to another fascinating area. Wearable tech, where technology and the body come together.
Yeah, those fitness trackers, smartwatches, all that stuff that's practically becoming part of us.
Exactly. Like, consider a device like Doppel. It can actually subtly change how you feel your heartbeat to make you feel calmer or more alert. It's kind of like having a personal biofeedback coach right there on your wrist.
Yeah.
Makes you wonder, if tech can directly affect our inner states like that, how does that blur the lines between our minds, our bodies, and technology?
It's like we're living in a sci-fi movie. And it makes me think about all the other ways our bodies get involved in thinking.
Yeah.
We talk with our hands, we pace when we're deep in thought. Are those considered extensions of the mind, too?
You know, they could be.
Yeah.
The role of movement and gestures in thinking is really interesting, and there's a lot of research on it.
Right.
When we gesture, we're often expressing what's going on in our minds. And research has actually found that it can help us explain complex ideas more clearly.
So it's not just like waving our hands around. Right.
It's connected to how our brains are working. I've also heard that gesturing is linked to how kids learn language.
There's definitely a strong connection there. Researchers like Susan Golden Meadow, they've done some really cool work on this.
Oh, yeah.
They've seen that kids often use gestures to express ideas they can't yet say with words. It's like their bodies are getting the idea even before their language catches up.
So parents who talk with their hands might be giving their kids a brain boost without even realizing it.
That's interesting to think about.
Yeah. I'm curious, are there any real-world examples of how Like using gestures can help adults learn or understand things better too.
Absolutely. There's this geology professor who uses gestures based on American Sign Language to help her students understand complex geological stuff.
Oh, wow.
By using these gestures, she makes these tough concepts easier to understand and more engaging for the students.
Cool.
It's a great example of how even simple movements can become part of how we think, especially when we're trying to learn.
I'm starting to see how this extended mind idea pops up everywhere in our lives. And I'm especially interested in how it works when we interact with other people. After all, we don't think alone in a bubble,
Right.
right?
Right.
Our minds are always interacting and working with others.
You've hit on another key point of Clark's thesis.
Okay.
He argues that our minds extend not only through tools and our bodies, but also through our social interactions and relationships.
So it's like our minds are all these interconnected networks constantly sharing information and learning from each other.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
I'd love to explore that more.
Well, there's this concept called transactive memory, where groups of people develop a shared knowledge of who knows what.
Okay.
This lets them tap into each other's expertise more easily so they can solve problems better as a group. Like, think about a really good team at work.
Mhm.
Over time, they just know each other's strengths and what they're good at.
It's like they've formed a combined intelligence, like the whole is greater than the sum of its parts or something. But I've also heard that being physically near each other matters for this kind of collaborative thinking.
You're right. That's crucial.
Yeah.
There's this thing called the Allen curve, which shows that the more physical distance there is, the less people communicate.
Oh, interesting.
This suggests that those random encounters, casual chats, just being around each other in a space can really help boost collaboration and new ideas.
Nice. So all those water cooler conversations are important after all. I'll remember that next time I get caught chatting. But what about open plan offices? I thought those were designed for better collaboration.
It's a bit more complicated than that.
Yeah.
While they might seem perfect for interaction, some research suggests that open plan offices can actually make it harder to focus and do deep thinking.
Really?
Yeah, all the distractions, noise, lack of privacy, it can be tough.
So it's a trade-off.
Yeah, you gain some team benefits, but you might lose some individual focus and deep thinking. It shows how important it is to find that sweet spot between focused, solo work and getting together with others. Maybe a better model is something like monasteries, where people have their own spaces for quiet thinking, but also chances to connect with others.
Okay, now I'm rethinking my whole workspace setup. Might need to build myself a little thinking nook. But here's a question I've been wondering about. Can you actually measure how well someone extends their mind? Is there like an extended mind IQ test?
That's a great question, and researchers are starting to look into it.
Ooh.
There's growing evidence that we can actually test for these extension skills by using special IQ tests that people use tools and interact with their environment.
So instead of just testing your brain power on its own, they're looking at how well you can use the things around you to solve problems.
Exactly. And what they're finding is really interesting. People who are better at extending their minds, those who use tools, their surroundings, and other people effectively, they tend to be better problem solvers in real-life situations. It suggests that being good at extending our minds is a valuable skill in itself.
Wow. This is all so fascinating. It's making me realize that intelligence isn't just about what's going on inside our heads, but also how well we can connect with and use the world around us. And with technology changing so fast, this whole extended mind idea seems more important than ever.
Absolutely. As the lines between our minds and technology keep getting blurrier, understanding how we extend our cognitive abilities is going to be crucial for navigating the future.
Welcome back. I'm still thinking about that idea that our phones aren't just tools, they're kind of like woven into how we think.
Yeah, it really changes how we see our own intelligence, huh?
Totally. So we talked about notebooks, smartphones, but are there any other examples of tech that really show this extended mind idea in action?
Well, think about those huge, high-resolution displays that are becoming more common.
Yeah, okay.
It's not just about better graphics. They actually change how we interact with information.
Right.
Especially in fields like design, research, even medicine, where understanding complex data in a spatial way is really important.
Like those giant touchscreens you always see in sci-fi movies.
Exactly.
It makes sense though, right? The more tech feels like interacting with the real world, the easier it is for our brains to like offload some of that mental effort.
That's right.
I read somewhere about radiologists using treadmills while they were looking at images, and they were actually more accurate because their bodies were engaged.
That's a perfect example of how the physical and mental are so connected.
Yeah.
And research is showing that even short bursts of movement can help with attention, memory, all sorts of cognitive functions.
So those standing desks might be onto something after all.
Yeah.
But it can't be just any movement, can it? Like, does the type of movement matter?
There's definitely research emerging on that.
Yeah.
What they're finding is that congruent movements seem to be especially helpful. That means movements that sort of mirror what you're learning.
Okay, interesting.
So if you're studying planetary orbits, actually tracing those paths with your hand could help you understand them better.
Oh, that's cool. So it's like your body is helping to like encode the information.
Exactly.
That makes a lot of sense. And it reminds me of something else we do to take some of the load off our brains.
Right.
Taking notes.
Note-taking is a classic example of the extended mind at work.
Yeah.
And there's something about physically writing things down that seems to make memories stick better than just typing them.
Right. Like, I can barely remember what I ate yesterday, but I can still remember notes I scribbled down in college. Is there a right way to take notes to get the most out of this mind extension effect?
Well, some strategies do seem more effective than others.
Okay.
The key is to focus on capturing the main ideas and connections instead of just writing down everything word for word.
Right, right.
Think of it like making a map of the information.
I like that. A visual representation of the key takeaways. I'm a visual person, so that makes sense to me. But taking notes is only the first step, right?
Yeah.
We have to go back and look at them again later to really learn the stuff, don't we?
Absolutely. Regularly reviewing your notes strengthens those connections in your brain, and you often end up with new insights you didn't see the first time.
Yeah, that's true.
It's about actively engaging with the material, not just passively recording it.
So note-taking is like having an ongoing conversation with yourself using this external tool.
That's a great way to think about it. And this leads us to another fascinating aspect of the extended mind: the impact of the physical space we're in on our thinking.
That's something I've always felt, but never really thought about deeply. Like, I know being out in nature helps me think more clearly, but I never connected it to this extended mind thing.
It's interesting, isn't it? Think
Yeah.
about how natural environments affect our mental well-being.
Yeah.
Research shows that spending time in nature can reduce stress, improve focus, and even make us more creative.
I'm all about nature walks. It's
Yep.
like my brain gets a chance to declutter and breathe. But is there actually a scientific reason for that, or is it just like a personal preference?
Oh, there's definitely science behind it.
Okay, good.
Natural settings provide a kind of soft fascination that lets our minds wander and rest, which helps us recharge those cognitive batteries.
Right.
But urban environments with all their constant stimulation can actually lead to mental fatigue.
So our brains basically need a break from all the city noise to work their best.
Exactly. And this understanding is leading to a really interesting field called neuroarchitecture.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of that.
It's all about designing spaces that support our cognitive well-being.
Hmm.
Things like natural light, calming colors, elements that bring nature indoors.
So it's not just about having a cool-looking office. It's about creating an environment that actually helps you think better.
Exactly. By paying attention to how our surroundings affect us, we can actually boost our mental abilities.
This whole conversation is making me realize how connected our minds, our bodies, and the places we are all really are.
Mm.
It's like this big feedback loop where each part affects the others.
I like that, a feedback loop.
Yeah.
And it shows the power we have. We can choose tools and technologies that help us think better, we can do things that make our minds stronger, and we can design spaces that inspire us.
It's exciting to think that we can actively shape our own extended minds like that.
Yeah.
But I'm also wondering, what does all this mean for the future? Especially with technology changing so rapidly.
That's a big question. As artificial intelligence and other advanced technologies become more and more part of our lives, the lines between humans and machines will probably become even blurrier.
It's like we're entering a whole new stage of cognitive evolution, where our minds are merging with technology in ways we can't even fully imagine yet.
It's a real possibility, and it raises all sorts of exciting possibilities, but also some potential concerns.
Yeah, for sure.
Will we become too dependent on these external systems? Will they change what it means to think or even to be human?
It's definitely something to think about. But before we get too caught up in the future, I want to bring it back to the present. What are some practical things our listeners can do today to start developing their own extended minds?
That's a great question. And there's actually a lot we can do, starting right now.
All right, lay it on me.
Yeah.
What can we actually do to use this whole extended mind idea to become better thinkers, better learners, just better at life overall?
Well, first off, I think it's helpful to just become more aware of the tools we're already using to extend our minds.
Okay.
It could be anything really, like your favorite notebook, that spreadsheet you're always working on, even just a well-organized workspace.
So step one is recognizing that we're already doing this, even if we don't realize it.
Exactly. And once you're aware of it, you can start being more intentional about it. If your calendar app is a mess, that's a good sign to find a system that actually works with your brain, not against it.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's like choosing the right tool for the job, but the job is, well, thinking.
I like that analogy. And while we're talking about tools, don't forget the most powerful one we have, our bodies. We
Right.
already talked about movement, but even small changes can make a difference.
Like taking the stairs instead of the elevator.
Exactly. Or having walking meetings, taking stretching breaks. It's all about incorporating more physical activity into your day. It's good for both your body and your mind.
Yeah, and I know you're a big fan of spending time in nature. Any tips for making that a more regular part of our extended mind routine?
Even a short walk in the park can do wonders.
Yeah.
Pay attention to what you're sensing, the feel of the wind, the sound of birds. It helps shift our brains into a more relaxed state, but also more alert.
It's like a mini vacation for your mind,
Yeah,
but you don't have to go far to get it.
exactly. And speaking of connections, don't underestimate the power of interacting with other people to extend our minds. Surround yourself with people who make you think differently, who offer fresh perspectives.
So joining a good book club isn't just a hobby, it's a cognitive investment.
I'd say so. It's all about creating an environment where you're constantly curious and learning. And when you're learning new things, don't just passively absorb the information. Get involved. Ask questions, experiment, try to make connections between different ideas.
Be a participant in your own learning, not just a spectator.
Yes, I love that. And last but not least, we can't forget about the spaces we're in.
Right.
Even small adjustments can have a big impact.
Okay.
Do you work best in quiet? Maybe invest in some noise-canceling headphones. Are you a visual learner? Surround yourself with things that inspire you visually.
It's all about tailoring our environments to fit how we think best. This has been such an eye-opening conversation. I feel like I have a whole new understanding of what intelligence even means.
I'm glad to hear that. And I hope our listeners are feeling inspired to explore their own extended minds. It's an ongoing journey, not a destination.
I love that. So here's a final thought for all our listeners. If our minds really do extend beyond our brains, what are the limits of what we can achieve? As technology continues to blur those lines, what does it even mean to be human in this increasingly interconnected world? Keep thinking about those questions, and until next time, keep exploring the fascinating world of your own extended mind.